ahead and excellent. Thank you so much. Hello and welcome. We are halfway through the day on day 2, and I am thrilled to be your moderator today for this afternoon session, which is entitled Roundtable Dialogue. So I'm going to ask for the panelists to go ahead and pop their cameras on as I just go through some housekeeping. I'm going to stop for a minute on this slide and just let the audience have a chance to read it over. It is just a disclaimer for Ashford University. So I'm going to pause and let you read that. Okay, I'm gonna go on to one more, just general housekeeping. There are not any links in this presentation, but we just want you to know that anything that is shared but in this presentation, Ashford University is not responsible for and does not endorse or warrant. Just give you a moment again. All right, now the fun part. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I am thrilled to be the moderator on this panel. My name is Dr. Stephanie Heald, and I'm a full-time faculty member here at Ashford University. And I am thrilled to be able to lead this discussion we actually have one presenter out today, but we have the rest here. And I'm gonna give a moment for our presenters to actually just do a brief introduction for themselves, just because who knows them better than themselves. So Leticia, if you wouldn't mind just popping off mute and let the audience know who you are and a little about yourself. Let's pop you off mute and see if you can. Little sound check. Let's see. Okay, there you go. Go ahead.
Okay. Hi, I'm Leticia Evans. I'm from Louisiana. I live in Lafayette. I have a bachelor's degree from Louisiana Lafayette in Child and Family Studies, and I just finished my master's program in educational leadership this week from Ashford. I'm currently teaching in Acadia Parish. I teach Head Start, and I've been doing that for 13 years. So I'm in the process of moving up to 2nd grade special ed. So.
Thank you, Leticia, for volunteering to be on the panel.
No problem.
Our next panelist, Brooke. Brooke, will you come on and just let us know a little bit about yourself?
Okay, I got the mute off. All right, so I'm Brooke Layton. I live in Plant City, Florida, and I've been in education for about 16 years. I taught for 13 years. I was an administrator for about almost 4 years, and I teach for Ashford University undergrad for about 5 years. I have a 2-year-old and a 5-year-old, and we just recently got a German Shepherd puppy, and let me tell you, the best thing was trying to potty train both of them at the same time. But yeah, I absolutely love teaching. I'm also an author, and I'm really excited about this conference. I've just loved listening to the people that I've listened to today. I was jotting down a bunch of stuff that I'm going to do with my boys. So it's very nice meeting you guys.
Well, thank you. We're going to have to talk offline because a lot of Florida people here, Dr. McKay and yourself, and yes, I'm also from Sarasota, so interesting. Our next panelist is Cindy Taribush, and I hope I said that right. I was in her session this morning, and let me tell you what, she's full of ideas and is a phenomenal presenter, so I am honored to be with her here today.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm in stormy New Jersey, but now I have electricity, which I didn't so much have this morning. We'll see how that lasts. It's still really windy here. I do associate faculty work with Ashford. I'm also an early childhood consultant, so I work with schools to help improve their practices based on what we know is best practice now. I'm an author and a podcast co-host and a frequent presenter. Being online, doing all my work online now, of course, thanks to COVID-19. So that's been an adventure. And let's see what else. Oh, I used to be, this is important to the people I'm sure on this call. I used to be a classroom teacher. I used to be a school director. So I've been in a lot of the situations that you all currently may work in.
I think that's such a great point because you've been in the trenches, you've been there. I think that's great. Thank you.
And I still get to visit schools and work with the teachers who are doing that. So it's great.
That's good. And never lose sight. Keeps you relevant and modern. Yeah, I love it.
Yeah.
Dr. McKay, is your voice ready? Are you presenting a lot?
Yeah, it took a couple breaths and a drink of water, so I'm good. Yes, I am actually not too far from Plant City. I'm actually in Winter Haven, Florida. We've been here for about a year. I'm originally from the Louisville, Kentucky area. Yes, I have been in the field for a very long time, and I tell my students all the time I've done everything from chief cook and bottle washer to van driver to diaper changer in emergencies and all of the things. So I've been a trainer, corporate trainer, district manager, been in higher ed, my favorite position thus far, except for the 5 years that I spent doing my family home preschool. I just have to say those were near and dear.
Guys, stop all that jumping. Sorry.
Well, we can all relate to the situations. If we're all at home, we're all with kiddos, we get it. So those home preschool times are in a lot of our homes right now, just given the circumstances. So great to have you here, Dr. McKay.
Thank you.
Finally, we have, not finally, but in addition, we have Miss Kimberly Brown. Miss Kimberly Brown, are you able to come on camera? Yep, I can see a camera over for Kimberly. Oh, I see you, Kimberly. I can hear you. Kimberly, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. It's saying that I can't do the camera because it's disabled. Okay.
There you go.
Am I there?
Yes, Kimberly. Can you do the introduction?
So sorry, Dr. McKay. That was me like yelling at the kids to sit down.
It's okay. I'm used to that, so I get it. Only now it's my dog, so it's okay.
Hi, Ann. I see you saying hi. So I'm Kimberly Brown, for everyone who doesn't know me. I am 25 years into the childcare industry. I have done pretty much everything from working in daycare, being a lead teacher, teaching the lead teachers that we hired, to working in a safe haven where we took care of children who were either their parents were in battered women's shelter and couldn't bring them there, so we kept them 24 hours, or they were taken in foster care and didn't have a placement, so we would take care of them. I worked there and worked as a supervisor. I have traveled multiple places working as a nanny, which is what I currently do, so that's why I'm telling my kids that I'm nannying for to sit down. But so I've done this for 25 years. I love childcare. I'm from New Jersey, so Cindy, I get it. I wasn't sure what was going to happen today either. We've been having power going in and out. But I have along the way gone to nanny school and become anywhere from newborn care specialist to being in the delivery room with my bosses while they're having their babies. So if you name it, I pretty much have done it. I have had training with my teenagers where I do special circumstances where I've had teenagers whose parents have passed away, and they kind of brought me in to be there with the teenagers. And I'm also a foster parent, so I help a lot of people work through the foster care system when they want to do foster to adoption, as I've done myself. So I'm a mom of a 2.5-year-old, and I also have a parent consultant agency called Nanny Kim on the Go. So I help a lot of people who I really try to navigate the hiring system of a nanny by themselves without having to use a nanny. I mean, like a nanny agency, because some people just like to be very hands-on and do it themselves, but they don't understand what it is we do. So I'm always busy. I am a busy lady, someone said in the writing. So yeah, I also help with and volunteer with S Nanny Association, which is an association that helps to link a lot of the nannies together and do a lot of educational events for them. And I've just launched with some friends in the industry, the Nanny Sitter Education Fund, which I'm the president of. And so what we really, really wanted to do was for everybody that is in school, because I'm currently, a student at Ashford, and I know how it can be expensive. I know how you can really want to build your career and not be able to do it, and then like not have the funds. So we get people that give donations to us, and then we, kind of help people that want to go back to school and, maybe become like a doula or newborn care specialist and just kind of reinvent themselves. So that is me, very busy in a nutshell, but overall, the love for the kids is the main drive.
Wow. Wow. So as you can see, we have an amazingly experienced and diverse panel, and I am super excited to be moderating the discussion today. So again, I just want to thank our panelists, and what we're going to do is just do a roundtable discussion. For the audience members, I really do encourage you to use the chat to type any questions that you have for these panelists. If you want to put their names in there, if it's specific to something that relates to their introduction, that is great. So just kind of put that in there. I'll moderate those questions, and panelists, feel free to jump in as we go. So I am actually going to stop sharing just so that we can be able to see as you're sharing. So let me just pause the share. And I'm going to start off with a question. And Leticia, I hope you don't mind, but I would love to start with you. And I just want to know, what are you most optimistic about? Right now, there's a lot of challenges that we face. But what are you most optimistic about in early childhood education? And then other panelists, if you want to go ahead and jump in, and I'll just kind of monitor the chat and we'll go from there.
Who are you starting with?
Leticia, would you
Okay.
go first? I mean,
Okay. I couldn't hear it.
I couldn't hear her either, so.
Sorry, let me turn my speakers up. Is that better?
Yes.
Okay. So we face a lot of challenges right now in education, just globally, and just one thing that you're optimistic about for the future in early childhood education.
I know for sure that with everything going on, that there's going to be much more attention and work into like the health and safety in the classroom, sanitation. So I know that before I had a problem with making sure that my children came to school healthy, and that when they came to school sick, that there was someone to pick them up when they weren't feeling well. So I know that with all of this going on, making sure that when they come in, they're not sick and that they're completely, totally healthy is going to be like the main priority now. So I'm optimistic about that healthy children will be coming to school and healthy children will be leaving school.
I love it. Panelists, feel free to jump right in. I'm going to mute myself and you guys just go, feel free.
Hi, I'll add something. Okay, I'll add something. I'm really optimistic about what we've learned from having to be remote, about family connections, about partnering with families to help their children become educated, and as part of that, about the importance of respecting families' individual needs and choices. I was watching that play out when I was working with schools, and schools started out with, here's when we're going to be online. And then they realized, no, we have to poll the families. And then they realized, no, this doesn't work for every family. We have to come up with another way to connect to the child. And I think it really has strengthened the family educator connections in a way that I hope we can continue to do even when we're back in person.
Yeah, I would totally agree with that. And the other thing that I find has been, I mean, we still have a long way to go, but the conversation of the importance of ECE in the world, that, people are like, it's just dawning on them that like, oh, we can't live without childcare. What are we going to do if we can't bring our children to childcare, to preschool? So the awareness could not have come at a better time. I hate that it took COVID to do that, but hey, I will take it. Power to the profession. I hope, and I know that NACI is on top of this, as well as the Council for Professional Recognition. Everybody's really on top of it, but I think that this is where we start picking up and we start becoming advocates for what we do. And that's been hard for early childhood educators. They don't know how to advocate for themselves. And I think now is the time, and I think now would be a good time to really, you know, provide that support on how to be a good advocate for what we do.
Go ahead, Kimberly. You should be, you should be able to unmute.
Okay, great. I wanted to just say, like, I agree with everyone on the panel. I think the other thing is because I also work on the flip side where I'm in the homes with the parents working as a nanny. And so I think that there's been a lot of communication, a lot more, having to have a lot more communication with the support system, the structure. I feel like a lot of times education falls on like one parent, like, oh, you take them to school, you do the homework, you do. But now there's been more of a communication of who's doing what and making sure that the child's education is not slipping through the ground, like falling through the ground, and everybody has a hands-on type of feel. I also am really excited about homeschooling. I'm a big homeschool advocate, and I feel like I've said it recently a couple of times. I feel like a lot of times people have gotten lazy because they feel like daycare or school is like their like place to just, okay, I got to get rid of the kid for a couple hours. Like that's where they go to babysit. And, you know, at the end of the day, whether the schools open up or not, you know, education is your job as a parent, you know, and as teachers, like it's our job as nannies, it's our jobs to educate the children. Like we shouldn't have to rely on what the school does and the education system does. So I think that the conversations about what people are able to do and people not realizing that like there are other options than just the regular school or just, you know, what everybody else is doing. So I think that that is like a really big deal. And just people having options and understanding that they've had them all along. And this is just pushing them in to looking into other avenues. So yeah.
Brooke, go ahead.
She's muted.
Okay, I got it. I keep clicking unmute, but I agree with you completely. And I'm finding this a lot with my friends that are in elementary right now. A lot of the parents that just didn't understand what it took to educate their children and what teachers go through. And they just, a lot of times when I was sitting through meetings with teachers and parents to facilitate those meetings, I would feel like a lot of the blame was, you know, not what can I do to help my child, but, you know, what is going wrong in the classroom. And I feel like a lot of parents now understand, they're like, I get it. And I hope that that stays with them so that when the kids come back to school, they're on board. You know what I mean, with the teachers, and we have this open communication and everybody's working together, because I think they have a better understanding of what it takes to educate their children. Yeah.
All these are great ideas. Audience members, feel free to type into the chat. I see some great specific questions going on, and our panelists are doing an awesome job monitoring that. So thank you, panelists. I continue to encourage the audience to just type those questions in there. It looks like that we had some great book suggestions. I just received a private message saying, what is your #1 go-to for building relationships with families? So any panelists want to speak to that?
Can you repeat it again? What is your favorite?
What is your go-to for building relationships with families?
Oh, assessments. I do assessments all the time. And I have like my own way that I do it. But a lot of times before I even start a job, I will even when I did daycare, I would start a job and I would make sure that I got to know all the kids. But then I also did a lot of assessments with the parents. I would get to know them when they came to pick up, who was picking up, how the child responded to the person picking up. And just watching the children, like I did, you know, like a little questionnaire for all my parents that came in, what are they like? What are the things that, I didn't want to go on what other classes had told me that this child liked. I wanted to go on what they, the parents told me, and then go with what the children saw. And you would be surprised when you actually pay attention. Like, people would say the children in my daycare class were spoiled, but I would take maybe 3 or 4 kids a day, and I would just make sure that I poured into them. And then the next day I would pour into 4 more. And over time, you would be surprised at things that you find out. I was able to figure out that one of the children were being molested, unfortunately. I was able to figure out that one of the mothers was in an abusive relationship at home. And the children saw. So a lot of things, and those are just 2 situations that were not so great. But you're able to figure out a lot more that's going on when the parents actually know that you care, because then they'll start telling you things as a friend and not just talking to you as a teacher. So I think family assessments are very, very important, because then you can individualize the learning experience for that child and help them cope with different things that they may not have at home. So
As I found out in my research on the topic, communication, and it has to be two-way. So to piggyback on what Kimberly is saying, we tend to give the feedback, or we tend to give the conversation, we control that as the educators. What we need is ways, like she said, to bring that information out of the families, to really develop this reciprocal relationship that is based on trust and honesty and being open, and we're not judging and that kind of thing. That we really are. I tell my students this again all the time. We're not just teaching the children, we're teaching the whole family. And so in order to do that, the very first thing that we have to do is develop those relationships, and that is through communication, all types of communication.
I'm going to piggyback on that, because you said a lot of the things that I was going to say about non-judgment, going in non-judgmentally. People, you can't develop a trusting relationship with people when they feel like you're judging them. I'm not here to judge them. I'm here to help them and to teach them. And we always have to keep that in mind. And so one of the things that I've always tried to do is let them know me as a person. I'm not just some sort of stick figure in a classroom either. I'm going to let them know me as a person. I'm going to be friendly and open and understanding when they come to me with issues. And I always try to keep in mind that every family has their own story, and whatever their story is, we have to respect that unless a child is being harmed. We Absolutely. Have to respect that and try to help them. And I think that they really appreciate, part of families trusting us is knowing that we know what we're doing and we know what we're talking about. So I'm going to go to them with information about what we're doing and the curriculum, and invite them in and invite them to be a part of their child's learning. Invite them to get to know me a little. Relationships can be a very complicated thing, but I find that when families realize that you have the best interest of their children at heart, you are not judging them or their children, that they tend to want to kind of cross that bridge.
I want to jump in on what you said, Cindy, because I think that was awesome. One of the things that I found very simple that I did when I was a teacher, and I often advised my teachers to do the same, is make those phone calls continually throughout the whole year. I mean, I'm not just saying just once a month, but make the positive phone calls. I would start with some of my students that were struggling or had behavior issues, and I would call the parents and I would say, I just want to tell you what a great job your son or your daughter did today. And when they first got on the phone, they were like, oh no, what did they do? And I was like, no. I just want to tell you, so-and-so did such a fantastic job today. I was so proud of him. And that to me opened the relationship and built on the relationship, where I had the best communication with families that, you know, normally I wouldn't have any communication with. So that to me is really a really good thing to do.
And that leads to actually another question. Again, just want to reiterate to our audience that the chat is, it's going, it's flying. So keep those questions coming. Our panelists are doing a great job. One of the other audience members wants to know what you actually use for communication for busy parents. So how do you engage those parents that might not be as likely to visit the classroom? Cindy, you want to go ahead with that?
Yeah, the first thing I do is ask the parents their preferred means of communication. There are some families who will tell you, talk to me at pickup. There are some families who will tell you email is best. There are some families who will say, call me. Now we have families saying, text me. We have schools and centers using things like the apps where you can reach out, like Tadpoles or Class Dojo, or there are many of those apps, Bright Wheel. Whatever they prefer is how I will reach out. So when they tell me I prefer email, that's what I do. And then, you know, I may follow up later and say, I just want to make sure that you saw my email, but I'm doing it the way they asked me to do it.
Okay, it sounds like that's, you gave us a lot in one. Another question from our audience is, what is one piece of advice you have for a teacher just entering the field of education right now?
Oh, wow.
Leticia, you got it?
Take a deep breath. Don't take anything personal. Definitely don't take everything personal. And just take everything and be a sponge. Be a sponge. That's what I would say. Find the master teacher or the teacher who's been there the longest, or even just go to class and see what each teacher does, because you probably will get a little bit from each teacher and make it your own. So, yeah.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And don't be afraid to sit under people when you're off. My off time was my off time, but when I first got there, I remember it was my first experience being in daycare, and they said, they asked me, well, what's your favorite age group? And I said, the younger the better. And they put me with 3-year-olds. I was just like, 3, but I had a really, really good person that trained me. And then after that, I kind of went from each class just on my break, just trying to see, what different age groups worked for different age groups. And I remember what ended up happening was my class picked me. That's how it happened. Because everywhere I would go, I had the 1 to 1.5. They would find me and would come to my classroom. And eventually they ended up just saying, well, we just need you to be in that classroom. And that was my class. I stayed with them for 2 years. I was known as the potty training queen. We had a system. The kids were in there. People were trying to get their kids in there. But it was because I actually took notes from different people of what I should and shouldn't do. Like Leticia said, learn from everyone. I think that was key, was not just going in and trying to figure out oh no, I work better with this age group, but letting that age group kind of pick you, because once you kind of get everything situated in your head of how you see your class being and what tools you actually like to use, certain tools work better with certain ages. That's what I find. And if you're great at using a certain tool, then you'll probably do better at working with a certain age instead of what you think works for you. So
I would like to piggyback on that too. One of the most important things that I think you can do when entering the field is to be aware of your state licensing regulations and know them. Get a copy of them. Don't take anybody's word for it, because people Interpret them like they interpret the Bible, right? Everybody's interpretation is different. So get them, read them. Is it really a regulation that you do this? Is it a suggestion? And I think that that's very important in our COVID world as well, because we saw a lot of panic going on of, oh my gosh, we have to wear masks, and oh my gosh, we're going to have to go squirt the kids every day. And, you know, all of these things that we kind of panicked about. You know, we need to make sure that we read them. We have a copy. I had mine highlighted. It was so torn, you know, and ratted. I had to, you know, print them all the time. And copy of the Principles of DAP from NACI and the Code of Ethical Conduct. Those are my 3 go-to documents that I would give anybody when I consult, when I train. Those are the 3 documents that I refer to the most. And so it's very, very important that you know and understand what your state expectations are. For everything, you understand DAP through and through, and the Code of Ethical Conduct.
Dr. McKay, I think that covers so many transitions in our so many topics in our chat box. One that I didn't want to skip over that is a great segue from that is, will you please share your favorite way to transition students? So obviously we talked a little about the policy, but do you have any other actual on the ground working ways that we can do that alongside of those documents, those amazing documents?
You know, I never made a big deal out of transitions. We just did it. Does that make sense? Like, I was never one that rang the bell or gave a 5-minute warning or anything like that. Once my children were accustomed to what we did, because we did routines fairly, you know, I mean, things are always meant to have issues, right? Rainy days and all of those things, we have those exceptions. But, you know, I would just really like say, you know, hey, guess what? It's time to clean up. I would get in there and help them clean up and work side by side with them. And so it became the norm for them. So there was no bells, no whistles, no chimes, no any of that to transition. And I found that that was the easiest way to do it. So we would sing, and we did not sing the cleanup song. We would sing anything, you know, like, what's your favorite song? So we would just have conversations to transition. And I might even throw in something like, oh, guess what? Guess what we're getting ready to do next? And they would know because our schedule was pretty predictable. Again, given there's always exceptions to the rules, right? But I think that that's the easiest and best way to do it, because we, you know, if we have a truly play-based curriculum, then those transitions should be few and far between. So if we're giving appropriate amounts of time of free and unstructured play and exploration, then we don't need to transition so much. Does that make sense? I mean, you know, nap time and feeding and all of that jazz we get, but you know, I think that it is, it really should just be part of the natural process of discussion.
I think I'm going to just add to that. I showed people something during my session this morning about transitions. I think we have to give children tools to understand the flow of their day. And one of those things to understand the flow of their day are schedule cards. And so what we do is we take pictures of the children going through every segment of their day, set it up with them in the morning during large group time so they know what's going to happen, what comes after what, so that they have an understanding of what's going to happen throughout, and they can refer to that as they go through their day to see what they're going to be doing next. And I think part of the problem with transitions is that we're asking them to stop something and go to the unknown. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so if we have these schedule cards up and we can point out, and I've used this with kids, they will help each other understand the schedule once this is hanging up. Absolutely. So if you can show them and point out and say, look, what are we doing right now? And they can point to your free choice card. And then you can say, well, what comes next? And they can point to your lunch card. That helps them to understand they know what's coming next and it's going to be okay.
Yeah. And I would say I agree with both of Cindy and Dr. McKay. I used to also keep a calendar. So on certain days, if we knew we had music, they would know, like, today is music day and, you know, this day is not. But outside of that, in the home, when you work in the home, transitions are a big deal. I do know that. So I know it's different when they're at school, and when they're in school, they have everybody else to rely on. They're going to go with the flow of what everyone is doing. There's not going to be a lot of resistance, but at home, there is that transitional thing. So I do suggest that, like if you work at home like me, that you use transitions because it's good and it makes them more responsible for what they have to do. So I'm not above having a, cooking clock to just kind of set a timer, let them set a timer for themselves. Like, hey, you have 3 more minutes on the iPad, and when that timer goes off, then, this is what we're doing next. I do not need an argument because, hey, we set the timer and we agreed to a time. If it's, and even if some of the things that you use at school works great for that child in particular, and the mom is saying, when you do your assessments, well, how was he at home? And she's like, oh, I just can't get him to do anything I need him to do. You can tell them what you use at home, so then it makes it easier, for them to transition at school, or vice versa. Tell them what it makes it easier at school so they can use it at home. Because I think a lot of things correlate the same. Like kids love consistency. So if they have the same thing at school, at home, then it works better for them. But definitely I know at home, the transitions are really, really important. So if you can, implement them at home, it makes it better for when they go to school, because then they'll really understand how to follow directions at school. And I think that teachers deal with that a lot when they have a kid that is not used to that at home, like following directions, and then they get there and then you're constantly having to remind that one kid, like, hey, everybody's moving to the next thing, like, so that comes in again with getting the families on board with what is going on at school, and having that communication of, this is what we do when we're here. How does it work at home? How does he do, or how does she do when you're transitioning? Because I know sometimes for boys, it could be a little harder to transition than the girls. So
great points. Thank you so much. Consistency is definitely key, and communication is something that's effective, and is definitely the bridge between the home and early childhood education environment. We are running out of time, and I want to stay here for much longer and listen to you all and just soak it all in. But as a ending question, I'm getting a lot of questions regarding professional development. It looks like a lot of budgets are really are lessening, I guess is what I want to say in a positive way. And people want to know, if you had professional development opportunities, what would you want to see most trained on? So if you had the opportunity to choose a professional development topic or training, what would it be and why? So just an ending question, if I don't mind. I'm going to go through each panelist, and I'll start with Leticia. Do you mind just telling me, what professional development would you advocate for?
Well, usually at the end of the year, there's always a survey that my program sends out, and they want to know what would you want to train it on. And every time I put time management, because it doesn't matter if you're a beginning teacher or a teacher who's been in for many years. Time management is always something that I wish that I could work on. There's always so much to do, and so much little time to do it in. So time management, making every minute count. I think that would be a good training.
Excellent. Dr. McKay, do you want to chime in?
Sure. I think that anything that has to do with the basics of child development and DAP is probably the most important. May not be the most favorite topic that they want to hear about, but I think it's the most important, making those connections. And now the connection between PILES domains and state standards, because those state standards are going to become even more important than they are now. So that would be my go-to.
Very crucial. Ms. Taribush?
I would say that I would love for people to have professional development on emergent curriculum and curriculum inquiry curriculum where children lead the way and we follow their interests. And how do we do that and still teach them all the things that we know that we need to work on in the early childhood years? Because in fact, it can be done. So something like about project-based learning, inquiry-based learning, and following the children's lead.
I love it. Thank you. Ms. Brown?
I would say a few things, but professionalism itself is a big one. I would say mindfulness, like teaching children mindfulness, parents and families mindfulness of, how to respect children and their thoughts. I'm all about raising leaders, so I think mindfulness is a big one. And also, I think Miss Dr. McKay was saying something about which one? Oh gosh, it was something you said that I really would agree with, but I can't think of it right now. But yeah, the mindfulness and respectfulness for children and professional development. And then, like I said, the family assessments, being able to assess what the family needs and what you can bring to the table. I think those are all things that, as far as professionals, we need to have.
Great, great. And Ms. Layton?
Oh, she's muted.
My mute button. Okay. For professional development would be making it real world. How can you get this relevant to what is happening in the real world for your students? Because if they can make that connection, it can make a world of a difference and they can sustain their learning. So that to me is really important. And really with that, you have to differentiate for each student and you have to know your students and their families. So.
Phew. That was an amazing 45 minutes. Panelists, I am so thrilled to have been here with you today and spent the time this way. Audience, the certificate is in the chat. I really encourage you to stay on because Ms. Layton is presenting next, and she is going to give us a positive spin on homework in the early childhood education environment. And I am thrilled, thrilled, thrilled and honored to have her up next. So panelists, again, thank you so much. Just so you know, you had 116 years combined experience.
Oh.
So,
Yay.
Makes me feel old.
no, not at all. It just means you're very knowledgeable. So I appreciate your time. And the certificate is in the chat. Please make sure you print this out. And I'm going to pause for a moment so that Ms. Layton can upload her presentation. Thank you all.